Hello everyone, Dark of All Trades here. Now for today, I'm going to cheat a little bit, in that I already watched this whole video. So this video is by a channel called Topics of Religion.
You know, I've often thought I'd like to write a mathematics textbook someday because I have a title that I know will sell 1 million copies. I'm going to call it Tropic of Calculus.
So you know it has to be good, right? With 970 videos, this guy must have talked about tons of things about religion. So there are bound to be excellent and nuanced takes. So for this, I'm going to call him Tor, as saying topics of religion is a bit much to keep repeating. As of this writing, the video was released yesterday, so chances are I'm going to be the first, and maybe only, person to respond to this video. The video is titled, Atheists Are Funny. Like, funny haha? I don't know what he means. And let me tell you, the video doesn't really help. So let me be clear here. This video doesn't present anything new or substantial. It's mostly a complaint that atheists define atheism differently, despite agreeing it's a lack of belief, a dismissal of science without understanding it, and a repetition of the usual Bible is history claims without evidence. The video reads more like a venting session than a serious engagement with atheism, so unless I'm aiming to highlight bad arguments or emotional reasoning, it's not worth a response. So let's get into it so I can respond.
Only heaven silent for an answer.
So a while back I did a video about being an atheist myself.
Okay, so he is an atheist. All right then, this should be interesting. Maybe he's going to walk us through why he left religion or what convinced him there's no God.
When it comes to other religions, it was brought up to me by an atheist, and they said, well, you're basically an atheist because you don't believe in, like, Allah, for instance, so that would make you an atheist to Muslims.
So is he an atheist or not? Is he just an atheist to other religions that are not his own? Okay, I guess I'm a vegetarian every time I eat chicken instead of beef. Or is this the idea of everyone is an atheist to a God they don't believe in kind of thing? Or I just don't believe in one God more than you do, so you're nearly as atheist as I am.
You believe in one God, I assume?
In three persons, but go ahead.
Okay, so you believe... Okay. So, but there are about 3,000 to choose from that have been, you know, people who believe in...
I've done some reading, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So basically, you believe in... You deny one less God than I do. You don't believe in 2,999 gods, and I don't believe in just one more.
This is starting out pretty confusing.
So I did a video on that, and I got a huge amount of feedback from atheists saying that was bogus and stupid. But it was brought up to me by atheists. It goes to show you, not just theists, and not just Christians, have differences of opinions on things, but so do the atheists.
All right, so he said some atheists brought up the idea that you're an atheist to other gods. And then when you repeated that, other atheists called it stupid. And now you're confused that there's disagreement? Okay, let's walk through this slowly. The point of that analogy isn't to accuse you of being an atheist. It's to show that disbelief in gods is normal, even among religious people. Him, as a Christian, doesn't believe in Zeus, Odin, or Vishnu. Atheists just don't believe in one more God than he does. That's it. It's not an insult. It's a way of highlighting that belief is the outlier, not disbelief. Now, yes, some atheists like the analogy. Others don't. But that doesn't mean it's incoherent. It means people are thinking about it critically. And that's a strength in atheism. We are not a monolith. There's no atheist commandment that says, thou shalt define thy terms identically. And speaking of definitions, yes, atheists sometimes define atheism differently. Some say it's simply not believing in any gods. Others go further and say, I believe no gods exist. There's no contradiction there. It's just different levels of certainty. And that's why it's important to ask what someone means before responding. You might find they're using words differently than you expected. And that's not some kind of trickery, that's just philosophy. As for the point that atheists brought it up, so why are they mad now? Look, Tor, quoting an idea doesn't automatically mean you're representing it well. If I heard a Christian explain the Trinity once, misunderstood it, and then mocked it online, would it be fair to say, well, you said it first? Of course not. So no, atheists aren't being inconsistent or belligerent just because they didn't like how you used an analogy they've heard before. They're probably reacting to how you misused it. And if the response to that is to double down and call them rebellious or confused, maybe it's worth asking whether the confusion started in the mirror.
Today, Zarian, atheism isn't the assertion that there is no God, he says. Atheism is just a rejection of the idea that there is a God. It's kind of along the same lines of most atheists. I've heard probably 10 different atheists say 10 different definitions of what they assert is atheism. It's subjective to your opinion on the subject.
Let's start with this idea of atheism being subjective. That's not entirely wrong, but the framing here makes it sound like that's a problem, when it's actually just a reflection of how language works, especially in philosophy. Definitions often depend on context. Take the phrase, I feel a little hoarse. Most people will assume I mean my voice is hoarse. But if you live in one of the US states that allows it, you might be talking about your emotional support mini-horse. As odd as that sounds, it's a great illustration. Context gives meaning. So with atheism, you'll hear variations like lack of belief in gods, disbelief in gods, I don't accept the proposition that a God exists, or even I believe no God exists. Are these 10 wildly different belief systems? No. They're all ways of saying the same basic thing, not accepting that gods exist. That's just philosophy. People nuance their positions depending on how precisely they want to frame things, especially when talking about burdens of proof or epistemology. And this happens everywhere. Ask 10 Christians about soteriology, that is what it means to be saved, and you'll get 10 answers. Some say it's faith alone, some say you need baptism, some emphasize works, sacraments, or predestination. It doesn't mean Christianity is meaningless. It means humans are complex. The same goes for political identities. Democrat means something very different to a rural union worker than it does to a college-educated progressive in a city. Republican, too. The label still communicates something, it just needs context to be precise. So yes, atheism is described a few different ways, but they all orbit the same idea, not affirming theism. That's enough for clarity, and if you're ever unsure, the best thing to do is just ask, what do you mean when you say atheist? Because if you know what someone means, you can have an actual conversation, and isn't that the point?
Okay, I mean, it's just plain and simple. Atheists don't believe in a God, and theists believe in a God. Whichever God is your belief, that's theism. Atheism is the opposite of that. It's that simple. You can word it any way you want. You can say, well, it's not exactly that, but it's this. Atheists argue anything that comes out of a theist's mouth. Even if I said something absolutely awesome to most atheists. If I go on an atheist channel and see what atheists are talking about, I do a video on it, and it's what atheists say, they're going to argue with me because it's a theist saying it.
Wow, that's remarkably disingenuous. Sure, there are people who argue in bad faith on both sides. But this right here, this is a textbook hasty generalization, taking a limited sample and applying it to an entire group. Just because some atheists argue with you doesn't mean all do, or that they're doing it just because you're a theist. Now imagine I turned it around and said, Christians always argue against anything atheists say, and then used your videos as my evidence. Would that be a fair conclusion? Of course not. It would be lazy reasoning, and ironically, that's what you're doing here. Now let's say, for the sake of argument, that many atheists do respond critically to your content. That still doesn't mean it's because you're a theist. It might just be because the arguments you're offering have issues. Maybe they're vague or logically flawed or built on premises that just don't hold up. The real problem isn't who's talking, it's what's being said. And if people consistently challenge what you say, it might be worth considering whether the arguments themselves might just need some more work, not just assuming bad faith on the part of your critics. In short, if we want better conversations, let's focus less on the labels and more on the logic.
If an atheist said the same thing, you'd be awesome. Oh, that's cool. Thank you so much. It's just because I'm saying it, so you're going to argue with it. Just another example of a bullheaded, belligerent atheist arguing about something that basically they said the same thing that most other atheists say.
Now let's take a brief philosophical detour, because it sounds like Tor might be accusing atheists of committing what is known as the genetic fallacy. That's when someone dismisses an argument solely because of where it came from, not because of its content. So when Tor says, atheists argue anything that comes out of a theist's mouth, he's implying that the only reason we disagree is because he's religious, not because what he said was wrong, misinformed, misleading, or just bad logic, but because he's a theist. If that were true, that would be a genetic fallacy. And sure, maybe some people online do that. The internet isn't exactly a curated philosophy salon. But come on, lumping all atheist criticism under that label? That's not just inaccurate, it's lazy. Some of us, take the time to engage with what's actually being said, not just who said it. If a theist makes a good argument, we'll acknowledge it. If Mr. Jesus himself sat down and made a solid philosophical point, I'd pour myself some metaphorical wine and take notes. But if what's being said is flawed, we'll say so, and not because of who said it, but because we believe ideas should be examined on their own merit. So, no, rejecting an argument because it's bad isn't a genetic fallacy. It's just logic.
Okay, so atheism isn't the assertion there is no God. Atheism is just a rejection of the idea that there's a God. Well, whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in God, it's a rejection that there is a God. It's just a different way to put it. Games. This is games. You guys say that Christians have semantics. What in the world is this? This is semantics. Same exact thing. It's semantics.
It's semantics? Okay, let's talk semantics. Because contrary to popular belief, that's not a dirty word. In philosophy and theology, semantics aren't just word games. They're the way we clarify ideas so we're not talking past each other. Tor says atheism is just rejecting the idea that there's a God, and complains that distinguishing that from believing there is no God is just semantics. But he frames this as some sneaky dodge. But it's basic categorization. There's a meaningful difference between saying, I don't believe your claim, and I believe the opposite is true. One is withholding belief, the other is asserting a counterclaim. So imagine this. I tell you I think Bigfoot exists. You say, I'm not convinced. That's not the same as you saying, I'm certain Bigfoot doesn't exist. Same conclusion for now, no belief, but very different positions philosophically. And if we're going to debate, understanding where someone is coming from helps avoid wasting time on misfires. Semantics matter when they clarify ideas. They're only just semantics when someone doesn't want to engage with the nuance. Ironically, Tor is the one engaging in semantics here by insisting they're the same. He's talking like it's some kind of trap, but really it's a distinction and an important one. So instead of brushing it off, maybe let's lean into clarity. It doesn't just make conversations more honest, it actually makes them better.
You can twist it, you can divert, you can walk around in circles. Put another coin into the merry-go-round. Here we go again. Word it wherever way you want. Give me your definition, which sounds awfully like the other ones, with some little twists. You're just arguing because you want to argue. You're belligerent. That's it. Rebellious and belligerent. Shocking? Nah, not shocking.
Tor here is calling atheists belligerent and rebellious, accusing us of arguing just for the sake of arguing, playing games over semantics and definitions. But here's the thing. I've met plenty of people from all walks of life who can get belligerent over beliefs. Christians, Muslims, Jews, pagans, Hindus, you name it. So if this behavior exists across religious and non-religious lines, maybe it's not a unique feature of atheism at all. Maybe it's simply human nature. Passionate people defend what they believe, sometimes stubbornly, and sometimes with less patience than is ideal. Philosophical and religious debates are often tied up with identity, emotion, and personal investment, so it's no surprise that conversations sometimes get heated and circular. The belligerence isn't exclusive to one group. It's just how humans argue when beliefs run deep. So if we want to rise above that, the first step is recognizing it's a shared human challenge, not a them versus us problem. Then we can focus on fostering respectful dialogue, rather than dismissing others as rebellious simply for standing their ground.
Today I was having a discussion with this guy who absolutely hates the premise that there's any religion, that the Bible is just fairy tales, the spaghetti god in the sky, whatever. He didn't say that, but similar. But he's rejecting God and being the creator. And his flip is that science has all this proof and evidence. No, it doesn't. Same thing.
Tor recounts a conversation with someone who's totally real and not at all made up, who absolutely hates religion, calling the Bible fairy tales, and mocking the idea of a spaghetti god in the sky. While I can't verify this story, it's worth noting that extremists exist on all sides of any debate, so maybe he just stumbled onto one. What I find more troubling is Tor's outright dismissal that science provides any proof or evidence. That's a misunderstanding of what science is and how it works. Science investigates the natural world, things we can observe, test, and measure. It's hands down the most reliable method humanity has devised for uncovering truths about reality. But it's not a catch-all for every question, especially those around meaning or value. But when it comes to evidence-based knowledge, it's king. Yes, philosophy and history have their roles, helping us reason and understand context, but neither matches science's power to deliver testable, reproducible insights. So even if the person Tor spoke with was a bit abrasive, science still stands as our best guide to what actually exists and happens in the world.
We have eyewitnesses, we have historical accounts, and you claim some history is good, but this history you don't claim. That's a choice, that's your free will, you're denying it. But you can't argue it with science because that's not tangible, that's not concrete, it's not evidence. Evidence has to prove my side wrong with what you have, and you don't have it. Same thing.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here, so strap in. Let's break this down carefully, starting with the claim that Christianity has eyewitnesses. This is a common assertion, but it doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Most biblical scholars, including many Christian ones, agree the Gospels were written anonymously decades after the events they describe. The Gospel of Mark, widely considered the earliest, is typically dated around 66 to 70 CE, a minimum of 33 years after Mr. Jesus' death. If Mark were an eyewitness, and there's no reason to think he was, that's still a full Mr. Jesus' lifetime of delay. More realistically, we're dealing with theological reflections shaped by oral tradition and not contemporaneous historical reporting. Take Paul, for example. He never met Mr. Jesus in life. His encounter was visionary, an experience he interpreted as divine revelations, though likely something like a schizophrenic break. While meaningful to him personally, this isn't eyewitness testimony in any standard historical sense. At best, it's private revelation, which may offer insights into Paul's beliefs, but not verifiable data about Mr. Jesus' life. Then there's the mention of 500 witnesses in 1 Corinthians 15. This is not a list of eyewitnesses' statements. It's a single claim written decades later by someone who doesn't provide names, locations, or corroborating evidence. To analogize, if someone today told you that 500 people saw a UFO land in 1980, but there were no names, no reports, no photographs, you'd be right to raise an eyebrow. As for the broader claim of historical accounts, it's telling how little contemporary documentation exists for a figure considered the most important person in history. This part always boggles me. According to the mythology, Mr. Jesus was the most important person ever to exist, not just in his day, but across all of time, and people knew it. So naturally, no one wrote anything down about him while he was alive. Not a grocery list, not a personal diary entry, not even a casual, "Met this guy, Mr. Jesus, today. Says he's God." Wild. We have no writings from Mr. Jesus himself, no diary entries from his followers during his lifetime. Even worse, early Christians lived in the Roman world, a literate, bureaucratic, document-loving society. Yet all we have are retrospective theological documents, not contemporary news reports. Nothing written down while he was alive by Roman administrators, scribes, or bystanders. That silence is loud. If Mr. Jesus had truly caused a social upheaval, drawn large crowds, and performed public miracles, it seems odd that no contemporary source, inside or outside of the Bible, mentions it while it was happening. This is major evidence against the existence of this character. Now the burden of proof issue. Tor claims that evidence must disprove his position. That's a fundamental misunderstanding of how evidence works. It's a shifting of the burden of proof fallacy. In epistemology and science, the burden of proof lies on the person making the positive claim. You say something exists, demonstrate it. It's not up to others to disprove it without evidence. This brings me to science. Science builds models based on observable, testable phenomena. It is iterative, transparent, and correctable. Testimony and anecdote may serve as starting points, but they aren't sufficient by themselves. Science demands more: reproducibility, peer review, and most importantly, alignment with observed reality. Theology, by contrast, often relies on unverified reports, traditions, and subjective experiences. Those may be meaningful to believers, but they don't rise to the standard of scientific evidence. So no, not the same thing.
We have atheists that say it was a Big Bang. We have atheists say it was an expansion. We have atheists that say it started with a Big Bang, then it went to an expansion. Nobody agrees.
Does Tor not accept the Big Bang? I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. Let's be clear. The Big Bang model is the scientific consensus for how the observable universe, or the local presentation of it, began. It describes a rapid expansion from a hot, dense state roughly 13.8 billion years ago. The expansion is not an alternative to the Big Bang. It's part of the same model. I'm not going to go into it in this video. I'll leave a link to NASA's website on the Big Bang in the description. But let me grant that he's accurately portraying what he has experienced. The confusion Tor is referencing is not coming from experts, but from varying levels of understanding among non-experts, some of whom happen to be atheists. But that's not how science works. It doesn't derive its power from unanimity among the YouTube's commenters. It works by testing hypotheses against observable evidence. And so far, the Big Bang model remains the best explanation for that evidence, as the model explains the evidence and is not contested by what we observe. If disagreement among non-experts were a disqualifier, then, well, Christianity has how many denominations now? 30,000? 40,000? Depending on how you count, upward of 45,000. Apparently some confusion is acceptable so long as it's theological. So no, the disagreement of atheists who aren't cosmologists doesn't mean the science is in trouble. It means that not everyone has read the same textbook. And while I don't expect theists who comment on the YouTubes to be experts in cosmology or cosmogony, Google is free, you know? Just take some time and read up on what the evidence is and what we observe. It isn't rocket science.
Do what you're going to do with it. We know that there's proof of the archaeological evidence that's described in the Old Testament. Atheists, archaeologists, have found this evidence. They've dug it up. In fact, there was a ring that was recently found. I think it was in 18 or 19, and it was found. And they used this was an atheist, used the scripture in the Old Testament to find, was it David's ring? I can't remember what ring it was, but it was one of the popular people of the Bible that you don't believe in. Went to the scripture to figure out where it would be found, went digging, and found it.
There is no place in the Bible that even hints at where to dig for a ring of someone famous in the mythology. I did some digging, pun absolutely intended, And while I was unable to confirm a David's ring, I believe he's referring to a ring, which I will show here on screen, from an article released in 2018 from the Biblical Archaeology Society, dug up in Herodium, in 1969, so not quite. LiveScience has an article about it that reports that this ring, inscribed with the name Palladius, dates back about 2,000 years and was found in a site built by King Herod near Bethlehem. Some speculate it belonged to Pontius Pilate, but researchers themselves say it probably didn't. I'll leave a link to that article in the description. So, not David's ring, not found recently, and not evidence of divine anything. There's also no indication that the archaeologists involved were atheists or that they used the Bible as a treasure map. And honestly, no atheist I know denies that people lived in cities like Bethlehem or Jerusalem around that time. That's not the point. Discovering coins or rings doesn't validate talking snakes or global floods. And even if the ring had belonged to Pilate, that would only confirm that a man named Pilate existed, a fact already supported by non-biblical sources. It says nothing about whether he washed his hands of a divine trial or sentenced a resurrecting Messiah. The whole atheists don't believe in any of it shtick is a straw man. Atheists accept that real historical people can be written about in religious texts, just like Christians accept that Muhammad is mentioned in the Quran and was a real person, without believing he was a prophet. It's just parsing myth from history. Now, for the record, a ring was found in the city of David in 2024, dated around 2,300 years ago. But based on the year he mentioned, it's probably not the one he meant. This vague appeal to archaeology is common in apologetics, but real archaeology doesn't confirm the supernatural claims of the Bible. At best, it can confirm that some cities existed, some rulers reigned, and some coins were stamped. And that's fine. But let's be honest here. Even if every mundane detail in the Bible were archaeologically confirmed, we'd still be right where we started when it comes to talking donkeys, worldwide floods, and resurrection from the dead. Archaeology is not here to validate confirmation bias. It's here to study what was, not what someone wants to be true.
So there's archaeological evidence, tangible, touch evidence, you could touch it, of the historical accounts of the Bible.
So, archaeological evidence of the mundane aspects of the Bible, which I already said I would grant. Though this is also not me mentioning the suspicious lack of archaeological evidence where there should be, especially with the Exodus. Since I'm not talking about any of that, let's move on.
The deity of Jesus in the New Testament is tangible with eyewitness, unbeliever, and believer, atheist and theist accounts. 250 plus people saw that he was dead, and now he's risen from the dead after 3 days, and he's talking and walking, and that's a miracle. The deity was seen and heard, but you reject that historical account. You reject the historical writings of eyewitness people, even atheists.
Now, I'm not sure where Tor is pulling this 250 eyewitnesses number from. Maybe he's offering a discounted resurrection package? Because the New Testament reference is to 500, not 250 plus. Like I mentioned before, it's in 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul says that Mr. Jesus appeared to more than 500 brothers and sisters at the same time. But Paul wasn't one of them. He's repeating what he heard, not offering firsthand testimony. In historical terms, this is hearsay, not evidence. Now, the really strange part is the claim that atheists saw Mr. Jesus and recognized his deity. That's not how atheism works. If someone truly believed they saw the risen, divine Mr. Jesus, they wouldn't be an atheist anymore. That's the opposite of what the word means. So unless Tor is just throwing around labels all willy-nilly, this is either a deliberate misrepresentation or an astonishing misunderstanding. I really want to give him the benefit of the doubt here and say he misspoke, but the evidence is not on his side. Let's also be clear about what's being rejected here. It's not history in the general sense. It's unverified theological claims. There's no external, neutral, contemporary source that confirms any of these resurrection appearances. Believers accept the resurrection on faith, not because it's a historically airtight event. And for them, that's fine. But it's not fair to accuse others of rejecting history when what's being questioned is a theological interpretation of a religious text. Tor accuses atheists of picking and choosing history, but he does the exact same thing by rejecting the sacred writings of every other religion. The only difference is that critical thinkers admit they use skepticism across the board, including with claims that align with their worldview. We're not cherry picking, we're using discernment.
Well, I'm not going to believe you because you're theist. Well, what about the atheists this odd?
Name them. Name a single atheist who says that Mr. Jesus is some kind of deity in reality and not just in the mythology. This is a big citation hecking needed.
I don't believe that. So you pick and choose what history works for you? Do you believe in George Washington? Were you there? Do you believe in Abe Lincoln? Were you there?
The were you there argument. This is a favorite of Ken Ham, and now making a cameo appearance in this video. It's the kind of line that sounds profound if you've never once thought about how history works, but let's engage with it for a moment. The short answer? No, I wasn't at Gettysburg, and I didn't personally see George Washington cross the Delaware. But the reason I accept these historical figures and events as real has nothing to do with personal presence and everything to do with the overwhelming volume and quality of evidence. For Washington and Lincoln, we literally have mountains of evidence. We have extensive documentation, personal letters written in their own hands, newspaper reports, diaries from both supporters and critics, and even photographs in Lincoln's case. These aren't vague accounts from anonymous sources written 3 decades later by religious adherents. They're multiple independent and contemporaneous records. The historical method doesn't require first-hand observations. It requires careful evaluations of sources, corroboration, and context. But when Tor accuses atheists of picking and choosing history, it's important to clarify. Skepticism of a resurrection account from an ancient religious text is not cherry-picking, it's critical thinking. Find me a single written account of Mr. Jesus that was written when he was alive by literally anyone. The problem is, no neutral first century source confirms the resurrection. The sources we do have are written by committed believers decades after the fact, with no external confirmation of the supernatural claims. If another religion offered the same level of evidence for a miraculous event, I would argue that Tor would certainly reject it. This isn't some kind of bias, it's actually consistency. And if we want to play the were you there game, let's flip it around. Tor believes Mr. Jesus rose from the dead. Was he there? No. By his own logic, shouldn't that invalidate his belief? The absurdity becomes self-evident. So no, I'm not selectively believing history. I'm applying the same critical tools to all claims. The fact that those tools sometimes cut through religious stories is not a flaw, it's the point. But we're almost done. We can get through this.
How do you believe some history, but you don't believe the other history? Even when I was a non-Christian, I still believed in the historical evidence of the deity of Jesus.
Let me get this straight. You believed that Mr. Jesus was a deity and there was solid historical evidence, but you weren't a Christian. I mean, I guess you could have believed he was a deity, but also believed in the other deities as well. There is technically nothing stopping you from being a pagan and accepting multiple pantheons. But notice how he says non-Christian and not atheist. Quite telling.
I still believed it, and I wasn't a Christian. It's obtuse to ignore historical accounts from eyewitnesses and pick and choose what you want and what you don't want. It's obtuse of you to do that. Good job. Walk around it. Give me your own definitions. Ignore the definitions in the dictionary. Ignore eyewitness accounts on the historical evidence. Ignore it. Free will, which you don't believe in either as an atheist.
Well, hold on there, Turbo Tor. This blanket claim might sound confident, but it completely ignores the diversity of thought among atheists. Not all atheists reject free will. Plenty do believe in it, and many more take what's called a compatibilist position. That means they think free will and determinism can coexist, like peanut butter and jelly, if jelly came from causality and peanut butter from agency. For my part, no. I don't personally believe in free will, especially the kind of unconstrained absolute agency. But I'm not speaking for all atheists. And unless Tor wants to start surveying the minds of millions of atheists worldwide, he's in no position to make that kind of sweeping generalization. This is simply an example of Tor playing fast and loose with definitions and misrepresenting his opposition again.
Another problem. There's a lot more. I have hundreds of videos on it. Look around. There's a lot more than just not believing that there's a God. It goes way beyond that with all these games and these tactics and these entrapments and ludicrousness of trying to say God doesn't exist because of blah, 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 and you don't have the evidence to do so. Nice work.
At the end here, Tor doesn't much conclude as he does combust. Instead of offering a coherent argument, he spirals into a whirlwind of vague accusations. Atheists use games, tactics, entrapments, and indulge in ludicrousness, all without clarifying what any of those mean. It's less an argument and more a release of frustration, aimed not at making a point, but at reinforcing a narrative, that atheists are somehow dishonest or manipulative for not sharing his belief. This is where framing comes in, and it's something I've been addressing a lot lately. When you frame your opponent as not someone who simply disagrees, but someone scheming, entrapping, and playing games, you're no longer engaging in honest discourse. You're turning the conversation into a performance, one where any opposition has already cast as deceptive by default. Ironically, while accusing others of using tactics, this itself is a tactic, a rhetorical one. It shifts the focus away from the lack of evidence he provides and places the blame for the disagreement squarely on the character of the skeptic. It's not only unfair, it's a conversation killer. And that's it for his, we'll call it a video. So what is he talking about here? Why are atheists funny? An atheist told Tor he's basically an atheist because you don't believe in, like, Allah, for instance. Atheists, like Christians, have different opinions and definitions even among themselves. When defining what atheism is, atheists just use semantics and a rewording of the same concept. Atheists argue with Tor not based on content, but simply because he's a theist. Atheists are just being argumentative and rebellious, even when Tor says things that atheists themselves agree with. Atheists engage in the very kind of semantic games they accuse Christians of playing. This one atheist said science has disproved God, but there's no tangible or concrete evidence that invalidates Christianity. An atheist archaeologist used the Bible to locate a biblical artifact, which supports the Bible's historicity. 250 plus people saw that Mr. Jesus was dead and now he's risen. That's a miracle. Atheists are hypocrites for accepting some historical claims, like Washington and Lincoln, while rejecting biblical ones based on similar types of evidence. Were you there? Good job. So now, what do you think? Do you think Tor clearly showed that atheists are funny, but not in the ha-ha way? Or do you think he simply misrepresents or cherry-picks specific data in order to try to make blanket statements? Let me know in the comments below. Overall, I give Tor a 10 facepalming Mr. Jesuses out of 10, a perfect score. He misrepresents atheism by conflating rejection of belief with active denial, despite acknowledging multiple atheist definitions. He dismisses legitimate distinctions as semantics while using his own selective framing. He attributes criticism solely to belligerence or rebellion rather than addressing the content or merit of those criticisms. He presents unverifiable anecdotes, e.g. an atheist archaeologist finding a biblical ring using scripture, as if they were conclusive proof without sources. He equates disbelief in biblical claims with disbelief in George Washington, an absurd false equivalence ignoring vastly different standards of historical evidence. There are no citations, sources, or meaningful engagement with actual scholarship, biblical, scientific, or philosophical. He claims science has no evidence and dismisses the entire field without understanding the difference between methodological naturalism and metaphysical claims. He takes 250 plus eyewitnesses of the death and resurrection as historical fact without engaging with critical scholarship or textual analysis, getting his own religion not even close to correct. He accuses atheists of cherry-picking history, then uses the Bible as a primary source without critical examination. He asserts that historical accounts in the Bible are rejected only out of bias, ignoring any methodological standards of evidence used by historians. Now, I really wanted to give him a 9, but he knows better. Or he should. He directly engages with atheists and their arguments regularly, but refuses to accurately or charitably present them. That moves this beyond ignorance into willful misrepresentation, which is the heart of intellectual dishonesty. A score of 9 would imply some attempt at academic engagement or structure. Instead, this is pure rhetorical posturing masquerading as informed critique, anti-intellectualism not even dressed as an argument. That's it for this one. So now, what do you think? Do you think I took aim and took down Tor with pinpoint precision? Or do you think I was one of the funny ones, and not in a good way, that he was talking about? Let me know in the comments below. Now, if you enjoyed this expert take, show that by hitting that funny-looking hand like button. And if you would like to be one of the 250 plus eyewitnesses to my videos, I know I have more than that, hit that subscribe button to get more videos every week delivered straight to your YouTubes. Speaking of witnesses, I need to put an extra spotlight on my patrons, especially Climus, Anima, and Sora, who are the Peter and Paul to the creation of lack of doctrine that is my channel. But if you would like to be reminiscent of the apostles that Peter wrote to,
letter from Peter to the apostles, dear apostles, how was your weekend? Sure is hot here. Tell Jesus, hey. This is the word of the Lord.
you can join them for as low as $1 a month at patreon.com/darkofalltrades. Though, while these people are actually the rockstar supporters of my channel, I cannot express my appreciation to everyone who likes, subscribes, comments, and especially shares the show with someone they think would benefit from it. My subscriber count is climbing, and I'll keep working hard to give you all only the finest glorified PowerPoint presentations. Thank you for all that you all do to help this channel grow. So as an extra thank you, here's a little bonus. Since Tor gave us a buffet of fallacies, let's wrap up with something useful. One of the major problems when dealing with Christians like Tor is that they honestly believe what they're saying are good points, and that people who hold similar positions will take these ideas and run with them, also believing they are good points. So here are 3 quick red flags that an argument might not be as good as it sounds. If someone says you can't trust history or science simply because you didn't personally witness it, just ask them if they believe in Julius Caesar or tectonic plates or Australia if they're not Australian. When a person claims that your careful definitions are just semantics, it usually means they're the ones refusing to engage with nuance. Precision isn't trickery, it's honesty. If someone is misrepresenting a position, it may be intentional. Don't let them get away with it. If every disagreement is framed as games, tactics, and rebellion, instead of addressing the argument, you're not in a debate. You're in someone's monologue. And now, you'll recognize them when you see them. Congratulations, you just leveled up in philosophical BS detection. Now I hope this will help you as you see more and more of the same arguments dressed up slightly differently as apologists and theists try to pull a fast one. Now you can be more ready. And as always, keep learning.
So that's why